Hi, my name's Jessica Goodman. I'm the French tutor at St Catherine's. The general admissions talk that's available elsewhere on the website will have given you an idea about what it is like applying to Oxford in general. I've talked to you about the college system, the teaching, and so on. And this talk is intended to focus more specifically on what it's like to study languages at Oxford and particularly at St Cat's. So Oxford is one of the biggest modern languages faculties in the country. We've got over 100 academic staff. We're amazingly well resourced. We have a fantastic language centre that teaches languages way beyond all of those that we teach for the academic courses. We also have the largest specialist collection of languages books in Britain held at the Taylorian Library. All the students across the university study the same course. Some elements of that course, so particularly lectures, will be taught centrally, whereas some of them, especially tutorials and some language classes, are taught in college. And in fact, St Cat's is one of the biggest colleges for languages. So we have 3 permanent fellows. I'm a specialist in early modern French literature. My colleague in Spanish, Ben Bollig, is a specialist in Latin American literature. And then Sam Wolf is our colleague in French linguistics, linguistics being the study of language itself, its structures, its history, its acquisition, and so on. We've also got affiliated lecturers in German, Russian, Italian, Portuguese, Czech, modern Greek. We have an extra lecturer in modern French, and we have native language tutors also in French, German, and Spanish who are specifically linked to the college. And on top of that, if that weren't enough, our master is herself a linguistic specialist. This means that we've got a really big and vibrant languages community in the college. The languages that the Oxford course covers, well, I've listed most of them then actually, are French, German, Spanish, Russian, Italian, Portuguese, modern Greek, Czech, and Polish. And all except French and Spanish can be studied to some extent at a beginner's level, as well as at post-A level. You can either study these languages in a pair, so French and German, French and Spanish, French and beginners Italian, so on, or you can study a certain number of them in what we call a sole course, so on their own. That's possible with French, German, Spanish and Russian. And then there are what we call joint schools, so that's a language plus another subject. The ones that we offer in CATS are linguistics, English, philosophy and history. The only 2 combinations that we don't offer are a language with a Middle Eastern language or a language and classics. All of the language courses are balanced between language itself, so grammar, translation, formal writing in the language, speaking, and what you might call the cultural side, so predominantly literature, also things like film. This content side is obviously both fascinating and challenging in its own right, but it clearly also gives you an understanding of the cultures of the languages that you can't access purely through language itself. And of course, studying literature and film allows you to touch on things as diverse as philosophy, gender theory, politics, art history, theatre studies, popular culture, the list goes on. And you also have the possibility within what you might call a straight languages degree of studying linguistics in the language that the linguistics of the language that you are studying. For all of the languages, the first year course is a broad introduction. So in French, for example, you study literature running from the medieval right up to the modern, and covers as well all of those language skills that I listed earlier. The intention of the course is to introduce you to all of the skills, both language and the kind of how to read and write about literary texts in a way that you will need to do across the rest of your course. So then in the 2nd and 4th year, you get more and more choice. You can become more and more specialised as time goes on, based on what you've been interested in and following your own interests. I say 2nd and 4th year because, of course, the 3rd year, as in most language courses, is a year abroad, which usually, if students are doing 2 languages, is split to some extent between the 2 languages, although there's no compulsion for that to be completely even. Of course, I should say as well, it's always more than a year because you have the summer holidays either side of that year abroad. So you end up with nearly a year and a half in some senses where you can spend time abroad. There are usually 3 different things that a student does on their year abroad. They might study, so go to university in the country that they're visiting, and that might be that you carry on studying the literature of that country, but students study all sorts of different things too. So I've known people go and study art history or politics, or even to pick up another language through the language of the country that they're in, which is an impressive feat. So studying is the first thing. You might also teach. So you might become a language assistant teaching English with classroom tutors in a primary or a secondary school. And that's often through a scheme run by the British Council. And then the third thing that students do often is work. So they find a placement in an industry that they might be interested in working in once they've graduated, or in something entirely different. Of course, the year abroad is fantastic, not just for making friends in different countries and for developing your language skills, but for developing all sorts of other skills too. And it's, I think, in part that time abroad and the development of those skills that makes linguists so employable. It's skills like, you know, communication and adaptability to different circumstances that means that employers are really keen to take on linguists. And in fact, after vocational courses like medicine and law, linguists are among the most sought after graduates, whether or not they actually end up using languages specifically in the job that they go into. So whilst of course you could go into being a teacher or a translator, which are the kind of perhaps more obvious things that a linguist might go into, in fact there's a huge range of things that people go on to do. We've had students just in the past couple of years go into media, law, property, consulting, working for charities, going on to further study, working in environmental industries, getting involved in startups, going into film, going to acting school, and so on and so on. I'm just going to spend the last couple of minutes thinking about applications and admissions. A lot of this, again, was covered in the general talk, so I'm not going to go through things like the precise admissions requirements now. All of that is also available, of course, on the website. Like people applying to any course at Oxford, you will apply through your UCAS form. You will also, for the languages course, have to submit some work, and you will do a language test in each of the languages, certainly the languages you've done for A-level. That is one thing, again, that you need to go and check on the website to be sure which language tests you are supposed to be taking. They get taken at school in advance of the interview period. Then if you're invited up to interview, you will have at St Cat's at least 2 interviews, and each of those will usually include a portion in the language, the A-level language again, for which you're applying. I think there are really 2 absolutely essential things that we're looking for. The first of which is a good basic command of the grammar of your A-level languages, and of course that's largely tested through the language test that you do in advance. Test papers, past test papers are available online. We really strongly recommend you go and have a look at them to get a sense of what we'll be testing you on. And then the second thing, aside from that good basic command of grammar, is an enthusiasm and an interest for the subject. So an interest in the language, the literature, the culture of the country or countries of your languages. I cannot stress enough that even if you have not done very much or indeed any literature at your A-level languages, you're not at a disadvantage. What we're interested in is whether you read naturally, independently, and absolutely crucially, whether you think about your reading. We would much rather you have just read 1 or 2 things or watched 1 or 2 things, but then thought about them and have something to say about them, than list 25 things that you've sort of scanned and don't really have much to say about. There are lots of thoughts in the general presentation too about how you might go about preparing to apply, whether, if that's what you want to do, whether that's exploring resources on the Oxplore site or just reading beyond your school course. But again, as I say, it's really that idea of reading something but then thinking about it, having a chat to people about it, thinking about what you make of it, what effect it has, how it creates that effect. That's pretty much it. Everything I've just said and a lot more is available on the faculty website. There are also some useful links on the College Modern Languages page. And of course, if you have any further questions, you can always email the admissions team at admissions@stcats.ox.ac.uk. Thanks ever so much for watching, and we look forward to seeing or hearing from you soon.